Welcome to this week's edition of the Weekly Outlook in the DeFi Dojo. It is July 28th. We're approaching the end of the month, and we all know what that means. The end of the month brings volatility. Beginning of new months bring volatility. And right now we have a couple things to look at. So Bitcoin dominance has closed a weekly candle higher than it has since like way over here in March or April of 2021. If we zoom into this, you'll see we're getting pretty close to the downtrend, which is this blue line. And this downtrend stems all the way back from the very beginning when Bitcoin dominance was around 96%. So I do think that we will get some sort of reaction out of that. I think that we could see a pretty significant reaction from that downtrend test. You can see the last time we touched it was right here. And it looks like we should actually be a little bit higher. So I think we should fall in line with that 0.5, to be honest, because I usually trust fibs more than trend lines. And so I'm just going to pin it here and use that extend right line feature. If you notice, I have an alert on this line as well, because I want to know exactly when that touches. And I'll be sure to ping you guys in the channel when it does as well, and we'll see what happens there. I think we'll definitely see a reaction, but I think we could wick as high as that 0.5. And this is taking the entire high here all the way to this low. And when you're drawing fibs, it's important to understand that when you have a high and a low, that is your range, right? So you can also take this high to this low here, which I've done previously as well, and that's where I get the golden pocket in the chart I just recently shared in the Weekly Outlook, right? And so you get all of this cluster of fibs all in this one spot. But I did want to take and show you that this 0.5 coming up is the 50% mark of the entire fall from way back when in 2018 when it bottomed. So we have the trend line, we have these fibs coming up. This is obviously bullish. I mean, Bitcoin is obviously still dominating this market over everything else. When we look at Ethereum dominance, it tanked again last week. We do have support here at the S1, so maybe we get a little bit of a bounce back up from there. But I really don't think we're going to see the actual phase 2 of this cycle where Ethereum takes over. Hopefully, right? Like maybe it's Sol this time. I don't know. It's certainly doing really well. Also, it's now peaked up over the 786, which is the greed FOMO zone, and Sol is doing way better than even Bitcoin, I think, at this point. So maybe Sol is the new altcoin over ETH. I don't know. I think it's kind of crazy. I've never really been a fan of Sol. Then again, I've never really used it much either. I think that Ethereum still has a solid place as number 2. It's definitely nowhere near comparison in terms of market cap with Solana. So I still think Ethereum is a safe number 2. And we just need to wait for Bitcoin dominance to top. And I think we could be close to that top here shortly. Might still take a couple weeks, maybe a couple months. I don't know. This needs to find some resistance up here and start rolling over and rejecting that trend. And then we can start saying, all right, maybe phase 2 is starting. But until then, DCA into ETH is my plan. Moving to Bitcoin. So this chart here, and I have to sneeze right now, or I can feel a sneeze. So if I just blow out a sneeze really fast, I'm sorry. Here's the resistance, right? We got the channel, and I'll zoom out so you can see the channel. That's the red line. And this channel stems all the way from the lows when the bear market ended and became our bull market, right? We got over it, used it as support, fell back down below, and now we're trying to get back up over it. And so you can see why that red line is important. Then we have our downtrend, right? Which is this yellow line. So you can see why that line is important. Then we have this white fib, which is the previous cycle's all-time high, right there at that little wick. So that line is also important. And then we have, what was the last thing? I think there's a pivot here. No, there's a pivot on the daily. Yeah, there's a pivot on the daily right there. So there is so much resistance happening right here, right? And so what does that tell us? Okay, well, that tells us that we're not going to just blast right over this. Obviously, we've rejected it here, we've rejected it here, and now we're trying again. Can we get over? That's the question, right? Can we get over it? I think we can. But I don't want to like long it at resistance. That would be dumb. I'm currently still holding all of my longer term stuff because I don't think this bull market's over, but I'm not going to go and try to like long with leverage right here at this spot, even though we just started the week off with this huge, pretty decent move up. I feel like I'd be FOMOing that. I would rather wait till we cleared all this stuff before I entered some sort of long with maybe a retest on one of these, stop loss underneath it all, right? Because once we break it, all of this resistance now should become really strong support. And that's why it's better to have all of these technical indicators and to understand what you're seeing, and it helps you have a better understanding of risk management. And is this worth longing right now? I don't think so. Not until we clear all of this junk. Looking at Ethereum, we're back in between the weekly EMAs. So we've been sideways for I don't know how long. This is a pretty large range we got here. I don't think that trading this is easy. It's not. Do I try sometimes? Yeah. How successful am I in a range like this? Not very. I win some, I lose some. Overall, it's mostly break even on the short-term trading. So it's better to wait for trend breaks. It's better to wait for closes over specific levels to then try to long. And you can see even that doesn't work, right? Okay, so we closed over this. Wait for a retest here. Long, tight stop losses, get stopped out. So when you're in a range like this, it gets really tough. Your best bet is to wait it out, stick with the long-term game, and when things become more clear and break over or break down even, then it's better to try the short-term stuff. Looking at total market cap, you can see we're right at that resistance, right? So we got this downtrend here. I know a couple candles got over it, but I'm kind of shooting for the majority with all of these wicks and points. And again, trend lines are subjective. I can, move this around and say, it's got to break whatever I want, right? What it really boils down to are the fibs. You can see we're holding the 786. So as long as we hold that, we can see green. If we start falling back down below and lose that line, then we can see red. This is kind of our bull bear line right now on the market overall. If we can get up over a pivot maybe, then we can have a little more confidence. You can see we're over pivot on the daily, and I don't think the weeklies. Yeah, the weekly we're already over R3, so it doesn't really matter. So the daily pivots are your best bet. And we could see as high as the R1 here. So that R1 might be a good indication that like, okay, now we can be confident that we're going higher, right? That might say, all right, we broke this whole Shidubi, or whatever you want to call it, downtrend. It's a giant bull flag, right? So we could end up coming all the way back down here before we come up and break it. I don't know. What I want to make sure of is that we break it before I get too carried away and get ahead of myself. So I can't really call it this week until I see some things that tell me I can call it. I hope that helps. Total 3, also still bullish. I don't know if I would short anything that's been strong. If I was going to short something, I would definitely try to pick something that's been weak for a really long time. And scalp it. Just get in, get out. While we're over EMAs that are bullish, it's not a good idea to try to short. If we compare Bitcoin to the NASDAQ, this is one of my favorite things to show you this week because we are now fully bullish. Bitcoin is now bullish against the NASDAQ. And what does that mean? Well, a lot of people are like, the NASDAQ's coming down. I'm afraid of crypto. Well, when this chart's bullish, you don't have to be afraid of crypto when the NASDAQ is retracing. So this helps us see that, maybe it can decouple now. We had a downtrend here as well, and then there's this pivot. So if you're not good with the trend lines or the fibs, just throw on the weekly, do Bitcoin over IXIC, and you'll see this pivot here on the weekly. And once we clear that, then we can be really confident that Bitcoin can continue higher even without the NASDAQ performing well. Looking at stablecoin dominance, this is now back to bearish. We've had a retest, but still closed below, and this could continue further down. MACD and RSI are still in bearish momentum territories, so there really isn't anything that I see at the moment that would suggest this is just going to pop higher, which means crypto could continue to move higher, and this would go lower. If we look at DXY, still not much action going on. It did cross that bearish now. But it's not so significant yet that this couldn't totally recover and then curl those up, similar to how we see the weekly EMAs on ETH. I think it was ETH that kind of looks like that. No, it's total. See how those kind of they kind of cross, but not really. That's something that can happen. And when they get real flat like this, it makes it really difficult to short-term trade, and it's best just to wait. Much easier to short-term trade when you have something like this going on, because you can kind of long and hold drawdowns with more confidence than you can when we're sideways, right? Does that make sense? So looking at the dollar, it's not really giving us much. It's holding the support still. It could still come back up to these EMAs here. And whether or not that does anything to equities or crypto is kind of up in the air lately. Like, it's not giving us much of an indication either way. Sometimes they both go down, sometimes they both go up. But it's still worth monitoring. ES, maybe the big story. So we have this huge rising wedge, right? And I remember saying weeks ago, like, you don't want to try to short this while we're, bouncing and ping-ponging around on the top until you see a move down. And we saw that move down, and we actually got a short or two out of it. I don't know if you were in the one from last week. I didn't really call it out, but I just said, this is a good place to get that short on the retest. And I was able to scalp a little bit out of it, which was great. But now we broke under the wedge. And I can zoom out so you can see how kind of pinpointed I am on all these marks there, and there. So we've definitely broken that uptrend. And now we got a retest. So we'll see tomorrow when Monday's, officially underway, how much of a retest we want to give, if we want to reject this early in the week, or if we want to try to close back inside the EMAs or not and kind of recover this. If we recover it, then that's bullish. If we start rejecting, then we can swing short. Looking at the NASDAQ, it's holding support. So we have ES that looks kind of bearish with bearish retests. We have the NASDAQ that looks kind of neutral, right? Like we're in between the EMAs. We haven't really broken any sort of pattern. We're in a channel that could end up seeing downside as far as the bottom of it, but ideally we're holding the support, and I wouldn't try to short this any much more unless we broke down below, the 19K, just shy of 19K mark. If we look at the Dow Jones, it's fully bullish. So when we go from one index to the other on these three indexes, it's like bearish, neutral, bullish, and that makes it really tough to trade. So if you're going to long something, I'd long something in the Dow Jones, something of value. If you're going to short something, I'd short something that is predominantly the S&P. And if you want to do some sort of like strangle, then I'd pick something in the NASDAQ. So I hope that helps. Let's see. We covered that. If we look at altcoins versus Bitcoin, they did not have a good week. Altcoin is definitely dominating, and altcoins are not. So if we're going to long something, then it would make sense that we would want to long Bitcoin and not altcoins. This could now see as low as the golden pocket, which sucks for altcoin holders. Bear in mind, we're probably going to bounce out of this, but that is a hefty move to the downside should we end up heading that way. Ethereum against Bitcoin, another terrible candle, closed below the 0.5 again, and so now that opens the door for the S2 on the weekly. And you can see that would kind of fall in line with this trend here. So as Bitcoin dominance makes its way to wherever it's going to find resistance, which there's still plenty of room up here, then Ethereum dominance could continue heading lower if we fail this S1 support, which would then bring Ethereum Bitcoin chart down to this 0.043 level, which if it hits here, then I'll buy a little bit more or convert a little bit more. I do still have Bitcoin and ETH, but I am predominantly in favor of ETH at this moment, and I wouldn't mind DCAing some of that back into ETH here. And if it proves that we're going to find support, we start heading higher, great. I'll wait for the downtrend to break, and then maybe I'll just go full on ETH. How do you short the S&P put options? Yes, you can do SPY, which would be the most popular choice. So you can buy puts on the SPY. For NQ, it is QQQ, and for the Dow Jones, this is the ETF DIA. It's hard to trade options on DIA. The volume's not nearly as good as SPY and QQQ. So I would probably want to stick with either like finding one of the top tickers in the Dow Jones. I think there's only 30 of them, and longing one of those. It's a lot of the value plays, like a lot of value older companies. Any thoughts about IWM? Yeah, I'm still holding it. I think from 170 something, 177. from the long-term channel. But we can definitely take a look at it, and we'll use this one, and we'll go here. And oh wait, I think it's up top. Where are you? There you are. Okay, so we're hitting the 786 here, but it looks like we're trying. So like when you see a rejection of a 786 like that, and then the next week it moves right back up to it, that's pretty bullish. And you can see this hasn't opened yet. July 22nd. Yeah, wait, has it? I don't think it has, because that's, yeah, that hasn't opened yet. So we actually just closed over the 786 last week. That is awesome. I'm very happy to see that. So we are now officially in the greed FOMO zone for IWM. So now all these small caps can potentially start popping off, which could make for really great trading. I would anticipate penny plays doing well. And if you haven't looked at the penny play channel yet, we do pretty well in there. Some of them are duds, but I think for the majority of them, we at least get 10% out of it, which is great. So if you haven't been paying attention to that channel, maybe you want to look at it. I think this is an amazing chart. This is an amazing accumulation here. And once you pass that 786, then all-time highs are now fully in play. So, you know, even from here to all-time high is, you know, a nice almost 10%. And if you were able to get in at the 177 mark when we got in a long time ago, I think we actually got in here and like suffered a little bit of a drawdown first. But, I mean, even from there, you know, we're going to be up 36% from that original entry, which is awesome. And I'll continue holding because once we get up through here, this is going to go make new all-time highs. And you can see how much IWM can move. I mean, when it finally breaks and goes crazy, like that's a huge, massive move. And then I would anticipate, you know, somewhere up in here for the take profits, 273 to 314. And that'd be awesome. First major resistance, though, is we're going to run into 233. Right, so you got the 886 and that R3 at the same spot. So I would envision like a move up there and a retracement back down, and then we'll try to break it and see how that goes. All right, so I think I covered everything. Yeah, I think I covered everything. So if anybody has any questions or chart requests, please drop that in the chat now. And if you're listening to this on the recording, then you can drop it into the chart requests channel, and I will get to that as soon as possible. MKR, I haven't heard that one in a while. Maker. Okay, so it's doing what you would typically expect. 786 retracement, find support below, back in the golden pocket. The retracements this cycle have been shallow, which is the only thing that is making it very difficult, because typically you would see a much bigger retracement after a, you know, for instance, from the low to the high, 700% gain, to only retrace 50% on an altcoin is kind of crazy. Like a lot of altcoins will usually go like that 80%, 70, 80%. So to see that kind of shallow retracement and holding these trends really well is quite bothersome because you can't figure out if it's done, right? The weekly EMAs are bullish, so when all else fails, you can go with that, and we're currently starting on top of it right now, and you could easily take a long on this and keep your stops really close under here where you got EMA, R3 pivot. All right, this should all be support. And if that fails, then you know that we can see further downside. So this is bullish and this is long. And if you've been holding it for a while, then I would continue holding it. If you're just trying to get in, this would be a great entry at the moment with stop losses just under, you know, 2,500. My cat, there's something wrong with my cat. I don't know if you can hear that cat or not, but she is losing her mind. MNT. I don't really like Bybit, but so those are bearish EMAs, and I don't like that last week's candle. I like that we broke the downtrend, but it looks like it wants to retest it again. So below daily pivot, I don't know if I would like be trying to buy this right now until it got back up over that 382 at the very least. It didn't even want to hit the 0.5. I mean, it broke trend, so I mean it's better than like being in a full-on bear market, but it's still under pivot. It's still under the daily EMAs, and the weekly EMAs are bearish. So I don't see this being something that's going to just like take off or explode anytime soon. And it might need to find more support down below, maybe the R2 at 76 cents first. Maybe that's a good spot to try to play a bounce back up. But other than that, doesn't look great. At what point would you decide it is time to sell ETH and go into SOL? Like, what in the chart would have you do that? All right, well, I haven't looked at it in a while, so let's do it. Let's do SOL divided by ETH. So index. Okay, so I suppose it would be when it breaks this all-time high sort of resistance that it's currently sitting against at the moment. Let's see what the weekly looks like. Weekly's bullish. We're through the greed FOMO zone on that retracement from the bear market. So, I mean, at this stage, this looks really bullish. This looks like something you would want, right? So I don't know if I personally would like just dump all my ETH and go all into SOL here. But if that's something you want to do, then you're justified in doing that with this current chart, if that helps. It's not something I want to do because I've just never really been allocated to SOL. So like if I was already in it to some degree, then maybe I would reconsider that. But because I'm kind of an ETH maxi, which, you know, might end up hurting me in the long run, I'm not personally going to do that. But that doesn't mean I'm not recommending it, if that makes sense. I think that this chart is hella bullish, and there is a very good possibility that Solana is the main altcoin to have this cycle. Yeah, I mean, you're telling me, come on. I believe that is very possible. I believe that SOL could definitely be the new ETH. It has certainly proven itself. I just don't know if I can get on board with that until phase 2 actually starts and I see Ethereum not doing it. Half and half is great. Yeah, half and half. You could even go 75 SOL, 25% ETH, right? I am a little more risk averse. I've done very well over the years. So for me to go and be super risky on SOL with what I've acquired over the years already doesn't make sense to me. But let's say you're some sort of like new beginner in crypto and you haven't quite gained what you wanted to gain yet, then yeah, SOL is probably the riskier, higher risk reward play, right? I'm more conservative and I want to go with the lower risk to reward play with Ethereum. I hope that makes sense. If you're like 20 to 30, go for it. If you're like 40 to 50, might not be a good idea. I'm 40 to 50. If you're 20 to 30, sure, you got plenty of decades left to figure it out, you know? Okay, so anybody else with questions? It's like when you get older, you don't really want to do the risky stuff anymore because you know your time's running out, right? Like, I don't want to screw this up. I don't want to screw up my retirement by buying SOL and it freaking has some sort of hack and now Ethereum's king again. Like, I can trust that Ethereum's going to be around this cycle and do something. Whereas SOL, I don't know what happens if Ethereum does start phase 2. I don't know what happens to SOL at that point. Does it go with it? Or does everybody start dumping their SOL for Ethereum? I don't know. I know if I was a SOL holder from $8, I'd be converting it all to Ethereum right now. That's what I would be personally doing, just to get the risk off, right? And have a shit ton of Ethereum. I hope that makes sense, just to kind of give you an idea of where my mind is on it overall. But this is definitely bullish. I can't deny it. It's insanely bullish. Like, even let's go look at Solana dominance, because like we can obviously where Ethereum is in this. It's not great. Let's see. So, I mean, yeah, that broke its little downtrend, and now it's got all the way to 5% potentially, right? Obviously, we probably would hit somewhere around here first. And so there's an R2 at 3.87. That would be where it finds resistance, and then after that, we get up as high as 5%. Totally possible. I've seen charts like this go all the way to the 1.618 and then the 2.272. I don't think Sol's getting up to 36%, unless, somehow it cures cancer. But, certainly 5% could be the high for the bull market on Sol dominance. And, yeah, it certainly looks better than Ethereum right now. I can't deny that. All right, any more questions, chart requests? Could you do AVAX similarly, just to have an idea on another legacy L1? Sure. Let's just flop this for AVAX. And we'll use Binance. So definitely doesn't look as good. Bearish EMAs on the weekly. Daily. What's happening here? Am I stuck? Daily just closed below pivot yesterday, so that doesn't look great. You can see we're already retesting that perfectly. So until AVAX gets back up over, and it's so low that everything's 0.01, so it's hard to really give any solid numbers there, but you can see that that's like a bear flag, right? Here's your pole, here's your flag, and if that breaks, then we're heading lower. Solana over AVAX all day, at least at the moment. Ethereum over AVAX for sure. Let's draw some fibs. Let's see. So there's the high. There's the low. So it did get itself back up on the support. So that's really the only positive I can give it. Unless it closed below. Did it close below? Oh, it did. Okay. So it closed below there, just barely. I don't know how meaningful that is. Ideally, you don't want to play with AVAX until it can at least get its dominance. Get this chart back up over the 8 EMA on the weekly. And then we can go look at the dominance, which probably doesn't look really that great either. And I don't know if y'all knew this, but there are dominance charts for all of these, for a lot of these tokens. So we're at 0.46% sitting on the S1 on the weekly, so that is support. If we fall, then you can see where we might head. If we hold and bounce, then maybe we break the downtrend and AVAX has a nice little run. That's pretty much the only way to really play that. So you can just draw your trend line, and it has a ways to go to get up there. MACD and RSI are in bearish momentum territories. It doesn't look great for AVAX. Hope that helps. Okay. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. All right. Thank you for coming to the weekly outlook. I will see you all throughout the week, and have yourselves a good night.